Anyone following games industry news will know by now that a sizable crowd of PC players are not particularly thrilled about the Epic Games Store. When it was first announced, many will recall it was actually pretty well received. This was back when the focus of the store was on providing benefits like significantly higher pay cuts to developers, free games every month to consumers, and the prospect of Valve's storefront finally getting some much-needed competition. But optics surrounding Epic Games Store quickly took a turn for the worse when people realized how many basic features the launcher was lacking, which made the rampant signing of exclusivity deals to gate off third-party titles away from the presently far superior Steam particularly contentious. Metro Exodus was the first game to really kickstart the backlash against Epic Games Store, and then exclusivity deals for titles like Phoenix Point, Outer Worlds, and Borderlands 3 only served to add fuel to the fire. In the midst of all that backlash, there is one noteworthy narrative against the storefront that's brewed over the last few months, that the Epic launcher is spyware and that Epic's close relationship with Tencent means that the Epic Games Store's customer data could be obtained and sold to the Chinese government. You'd be hard-pressed to find a forum thread or comment section discussing the Epic Store in which the notion of the storefront being spyware doesn't come up. The narrative has become widespread enough that Epic CEO Tim Sweeney felt like it was time for him to take to Twitter to address this issue with the hopes of putting the theory to bed. In response to notions that the Epic Store is being used to spy on people, here's what Tim had to say. "I support everyone's right to complain about tech industry stuff. Epic Store, with exclusive games and a Spartan feature set, is a fine target for ire, but please help separate facts and opinions from the lies about spyware and foreign control. I'm the controlling shareholder in Epic Games and have been since 1991. We have a number of outside investors now. Tencent is the largest. All of Epic's investors are our friends and partners. None can dictate decisions to Epic. None have access to Epic customer data. Tencent is a Chinese company founded in 1998. CEO Pony Ma and the other co-founders played a lot of Unreal Tournament back then and visited Epic in the early 2000s. In 2012, Epic was looking to move to online games, and we invited Tencent in as an investor to help us. I've never regretted it, and the recent anti-China rage doesn't change that even slightly, as it's completely unfounded. Epic has only had positive interactions with Tencent at all levels. All of Epic's big decisions are made here in the USA, and as CEO, I'm 100% responsible for them. I'm grateful for everyone who has spoken in support. I also read and respectfully consider all dissenting arguments of fact and principle. Just please keep it real." Attached to this series of tweets is a link to an article by website US Gamer with the headline, "The Epic Games Store Spyware, How a Toxic Accusation Was Started by Anti-Chinese Sentiment." In it, the editor is quick to point the finger at one particular Reddit post that's gained a lot of traction, in which user Mott M. Portent accused Epic Games Store of being spyware that sends information to the Chinese government. I won't go through the whole post as I don't have the technical knowledge to corroborate or argue against any of these points, but there is talk of stuff like the Epic Store enumerating processes on your computer, accessing DLLs in the directories of some applications, reading root certificates, poking at keys and cookies, taking advantage of a file called tracking.js, and more. Here's the thing though, not long after the Reddit post went live, a user from forum Facepunch going by the name Matt disproved the accusations levied against Epic point by point, attributing the misinformation in the Reddit post to ignorance in regards to how software actually works. Matt emphasized that he's not rooting for Epic Games Store and that he believes it is shit, that it's slow, that it lacks many features compared to the competition, and that the exclusivity deals feel like a kick in the balls, but he was adamant that claims of Epic's client being spyware are complete nonsense before posting his analysis. In it, he first began by pointing out that the Reddit user admits he is an amateur on multiple occasions, and Matt says that this shows. In regards to the Epic Store enumerating processes on your computer, Matt responded with this: "This isn't Epic Games Store enumerating processes. This is literally how tools like Procmon and Fiddler work. They have injected themselves into the running process." Fiddler and Procmon, for those who don't know, are tools used to debug and monitor activity of software, and these were used by the Reddit user to get a read on the Epic Games Store's behavior. Turns out one of the things he found suspicious was just programs like Fiddler and Procmon doing their thing. pretty much sets the tone for the level of knowledge and expertise the Reddit user has when it comes to this stuff, when it comes to software. From there, in response to the Epic Games Store trying to access DLLs in the directories of certain applications, Matt responded with this. This is how shared libraries work on Windows, and once again, in this example, he's showing Fiddler, which is something he has injected into Epic Games Store. Nothing here. Then, in regards to Epic Games Store reading root certificates a lot, Matt stated, quote, "It is a launcher based around a web browser. This is how HTTPS works. Of course, it has to check your available certificate authorities. Every other Electron application, including Discord and Steam, do this." This goes on a couple more times, with Matt noting that the stuff being noted as suspicious is how software of this nature works by default. Even suspicion surrounding the file labeled tracking.js was laid to rest with this statement. He has discovered what analytics and minified JavaScript is. The script is a minified JavaScript analytics tracker. Every single website you go on, including Steam, has this everywhere. This is nothing new, nothing dodgy. They just want to know how many users are viewing product pages and their retention, etc. Now, below all that, Matt did admit that there is some merit to concerns about how Epic Games Store accesses Steam's localconfig.vdf file, which contains things like Steam accounts you've logged into on a given PC, your entire friends list, your Steam groups, and your games and settings for them. This first came to light when a user from Forum Meta Council published the following post in which it was noted that Epic's launcher searches for Steam install and then proceeds to get a list of files on your Steam cloud, as well as create an encrypted copy of localconfig.vdf. However, according to Matt, even this has its fair share of misinformation being spread around, stating the following: "There is a lot more in the file, all unencrypted. The file includes login tokens also, which means the file really should be encrypted. And whilst the file does contain huge amounts of information, there is no evidence that Epic Games Store client uses anything other than the bare minimum in their import friends feature. This is one of the usages of the file, listing your Steam accounts from the PC. The secondary usage is then generating hashed copies of your Steam's friend IDs, not even full versions. They're making hashes. This is because they can't collect Steam IDs, names, or avatars from people who have not agreed to their privacy policy. This is because they operate within the law. The file being copied isn't an ideal solution either. However, it is required to be done at installer time so that the client itself does not require administrative privileges." Now, recall that Epic CEO Tim Sweeney already addressed this matter when he admitted in a Reddit response that Epic should only access the localconfig.vdf file after the user chooses to import Steam friends, attributing the mistake to it being a remnant left over from their rush to implement social features in the early days of Fortnite, and assuring that this will be fixed now that the issue has come to the forefront. He also explained that they don't use Steam's API because they work to minimize the number of third-party libraries they include in their products out of security and privacy concerns, but many users still found it suspect that Epic was employing some strange workaround involving accessing files outside of their purview without permission, rather than simply making use of the official API provided by Steam. Even Valve found this strange, stating in a response to website Bleeping Computer that the localconfig.vdf file is a private user data stored on the user's home machine and that it's not meant to be used by other programs or uploaded to any third-party services. So the way Epic is going about implementing Steam importation features is very much suspect and raising concerns, but the immediate conclusion that Epic's client is spyware for the Chinese government is far from ideal, as there's no tangible evidence suggesting this is indeed the case. Matt's post finally concluded by showing exactly what sort of data is being collected and sent to Epic, posting his own analysis images from programs like Fiddler, and the bottom line was that there is nothing truly unusual or malicious going on. Here's the closing statement that Matt provided. "I'm in no way denying that there are a lot of valid criticisms to hold Epic to, but I don't think it's right for people to keep spreading false truths just to further push the narrative they want. All I want is for people to be able to discuss actual issues without the same people spewing that Epic Games Store is spyware for the Chinese government." Yeah, I myself am inclined to agree with this outlook. There are many understandable complaints about the Epic Games Store, but mixing misinformation into arguments will only murk and diminish the discussion. Now, one article many people point to when discussing the relationship between Epic and Tencent is this one right here from the Wall Street Journal, reporting that major companies like Tencent are being forced to help the Chinese government spy on its people. It's no secret that the Chinese government engages in shady and downright Orwellian tactics to rule with an iron grip, and with Tencent having close ties to said government, the suspicion is that there might be some crossover with Epic. However, CEO Tim Sweeney has been adamant about refuting those claims, emphasizing in his latest string of tweets that he's the controlling shareholder of Epic Games, that Tencent cannot dictate decisions to Epic or access customer data, and that Epic's partnership with Tencent has been nothing but positive. Tim provided a similar response to a user who drew his attention to the Wall Street Journal article reporting Tencent's role in helping the Chinese government spy on its people, to which he had this to say: "Please see the definitions in the terms of service. Epic data is held by Epic and its wholly owned international subsidiaries, which exist because we operate and accept payments in many countries. Tencent is an investor only. Tencent does not have access to Epic customer data." Speaking of the terms of service, sometime back, there was discussion around Epic Game Store's privacy policy, possibly not complying with Europe's General Data Protection Regulation. One Reddit user claiming to be a certified data protection officer broke down Epic's privacy policy and came to the following conclusion. Their privacy policy has much larger issues. For example, they do not point out all your rights anywhere, which they're obligated to do for European citizens, or as any company operating within the European Union or having European Union clients. Their transparency is inadequate, and it's overall very lackluster in terms of what it should be. An example of a pretty good privacy policy statement in accordance with the requirements of the GDPR from a gaming company can be found over at Blizzard. They list almost everything I see lacking here. Now, it's definitely important to raise questions about stuff like this, and there's indication that Epic may need to take measures to better address concerns about the language of its privacy policy and their client security infrastructure given numerous Fortnite data breaches. There is indication that Epic's lack of regional pricing in certain countries has proven to be a huge inconvenience to many customers who want to buy games or get refunds. There is no denying that Epic Game Store is sorely lacking in many basic features, and there are good reasons to feel frustrated by Epic's aggressive limited-time exclusivity deals with third-party games. But when it comes to accusations that there's some conspiracy involving the Chinese government, all theories on that front seem to have been formulated on a foundation comprised of misinformation and paranoia. That's not to say there aren't tangible concerns around Tencent exerting their influence in all these different game companies. Jim Sterling provided a noteworthy take in response to an excerpt from the US Gamer article, which points out that Tencent also owns large portions of other companies like Ubisoft, Activision Blizzard, Riot Games, Paradox, and more, highlighting how none of these companies have faced widespread accusations of selling information to the Chinese government, despite having a similar relationship with Tencent as Epic does. But Jim expressed that what really worries him is how Tencent is planting its tendrils in all these different game companies, and how one corporation is gaining vast influence over a single industry. Points like that are definitely worth discussing. But in terms of Epic selling customer data to the Chinese, the so-called evidence being thrown around so far have no merits. If tangible evidence surfaces and investigation unearths that there is shady dealings going on, then it's a discussion worth having, but until then, it's best to stick to valid talking points surrounding the Epic Game Store's lack of key features and the way it's bribing developers to gate off games away from a far superior and far preferred platform. As a consumer, I may not be fond of Tim Sweeney's anti-consumer business strategy, but I can endorse him when he says, quote, "I also read and respectfully consider all dissenting arguments of fact and principle, just please keep it real." These are one man's thoughts and opinions anyway. I'd love to hear what your take is on Tim Sweeney's response to accusations that Epic Game Store is spyware for the Chinese government in the comments below. With that, I would like to end this news update and discussion video. Thank you for tuning in. To be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.